But no, yes, it's Borr.
My husband's last name is Nook, and it's Nock, and people pronounce it like knock.
Knock, yeah, that's what I would think.
Exactly, but it's Nook. It's Nock, like nookie, Nook.
Like with the two
And
dots on top of the O kind of thing.
exactly, it's German.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I've always known I was going to keep my last name, that I was never going to change my last name since I was a young child. I was like, no, I don't buy into that.
Yeah.
And my husband, fortunately, was like, yeah, my wife's good. She's branded herself and her last name. And, I'm comfortable and confident enough to not need her to take my last name, which is
Yeah.
amazing. Um,
Well, you got out of having to explain how to say your last name also. So that's already, that's a bonus.
yeah, right. It was like Rina Bindi.
And my wife knows someone who they changed their first name right before they got married, and then their last name also changed. And so I don't really remember exactly what the story is, why they changed their first name, but after they got married, it was like it was like going from like Sarah Anderson to like, I don't know, Tiffany Smith. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah, that would be difficult. I've never really bought into that whole aspect, though,
No.
of a woman needing to change her last name. I feel that if it serves a purpose, then that's fine. And there are plenty of cultures where women don't change their last name.
Mm-hmm.
But my family's actually the last of the Bindis. Like my dad was the last one with the last name Bindi, and then we had all girls. So my sister kept her last name, Jules Bindi, and then she has a daughter, Sage Bindi, and Rina Bindi, and her husband was like, I'm not attached. Go ahead, take it.
Yeah.
So we have the Bindi clan, the Bindi sister clan, and
That's good. You're carrying on the legacy.
to the best of our ability. I mean,
Yeah.
like what? Well, anyway, I don't know. So Oliver, I really like what you're doing with your digital marketing business, specifically how you're serving and catering to realtors and mortgage brokers as well. So this is a family business, yes?
Yes, it is.
And how did you get involved? Like, was it your mom first? Was it you? Was it you two coming in together? How did this all come to fruition?
So my history was in advertising. That's what I went to school for. I worked in a few agencies, but the agency model as a copywriter, which is what I was, wasn't really for me. And I was sort of one of those entrepreneurs. At any time I had a job, I was not one of the best employees. I just had my own systems and ways of going about things and ideas. And I guess some people in some environments, they really nurture that and they like that, even if those ideas maybe go against the grain or go against what they believe, they'll like sort of let people explore, I suppose. But it just never really worked. So I would like try my best again and again and again. But after a while I said, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. So I went into real estate for a little bit. Believe it or not, I actually failed my real estate exam. So that's why I didn't become a real estate agent. And I had a serendipitous conversation with somebody who was offering me to lead an avenue in his business. And it turned out that totally wasn't for me. But he just said to me, like, well, why don't you just start your own agency then? Because I told him my problems. He said, why don't you just start your own agency? And I was like, no, I don't know. He's like, it's honestly, growing the business is hard, but starting a company is not. And I guess it was, I don't know, it was just a paradigm shift, I suppose. And I just decided to do it. But I have my fair share of shortcomings, let's say. I wouldn't say I'm a disorganized person, but there's a lot of things that go on in my head simultaneously. And to organize all of those things is a really difficult thing for me. Also, simultaneously, my mom has always wanted to start a business. And she's a project manager by trade. I suppose also by life also. She just creates systems for absolutely, like she's the kind of person, like anything that's going on, like she'll just make it more efficient. And it was, like that shared narrative just sort of became obvious to us. And it started actually where I was going to be starting a business and I just spoke to her about it and just discussed some ideas. And then, like, now that I think about it, I don't think there was ever a moment where I said, let's do this together. It was never really like that. We just started talking about it more and more and more and more. And then before you know it, it was just understood, like, of course, this is a joint business. And now here we are, Borr Digital, family-owned business, mother and son.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that you guys are able to communicate and work effectively together. It's always fun to be able to do things with your family members and like be successful in it as well, because you have that extra sense of pride and ownership.
Yeah, for sure. Like Borr Digital has an extra special place for me. I think besides for the fact that it's just my project, the fact that it has our name to it, mean like we actually when we first started, our name was Thumbprint Agency, and I had like this whole story about how just like you use your thumbprint to get into your phone, and your thumbprint is like exclusively yours. Like so too, what that was like the idea that we're basically going to be your thumbprint, that we understand and we empower and we embrace every company's thumbprint, like their individuality, and we can help them unlock it just like their thumbprint unlocks their phone. And that was the idea, and it was a nice story, but there was just something about it that it just wasn't personal enough, like to us. And I think as much as everything has to be about the client, but we wanted something that like we could put our hearts and soul into. And so I think it was a family run agency. It's unique. I haven't seen so many family run agencies. And so putting our name on it just really solidified that in it. And I think it took it that extra step where it became so much more meaningful to us to have an agency that was called Borr Digital. So yeah, it was really special, but it's interesting because sometimes like working with your mom or my mom has its challenges in that at the end of the day, sometimes we'll be in meetings and I'm still her son. So she'll ask a question, and I, as every son or daughter can attest, will literally, as a son or a daughter knows, will get upset with her for the question because, come on, mom, don't you know the answer? Whatever it is. But like in my head, I know obviously I'm wrong. Like it's a very fair question. It just happens to be I like know the answer, however I know it. And it's funny when I catch myself at those moments where I'm like, now I'm not her son, I'm her business partner. And that's a very normal question. If anybody else in the universe would have said what she said, I wouldn't have been like, come on, man. But because it's my mom, I'm like, come on, mom. So that's definitely interesting. It's as much as we're business partners and as much as we're all adults, sometimes I find myself being that like 13-year-old kid who gets like embarrassed by his mom sometimes. But in truth, she's absolutely awesome. And she's pushed his business farther than I could have ever done so by myself. That's the truth.
Oh, that's so funny. I mean, I understand what you're
Yeah.
talking about too. I've done some businesses with my family members, my sister and her husband and whatnot in the past as well. And the dynamic there, it's like, okay, are we talking now as family or are we talking now in the business? Let's switch out our hats, the project manager to customer service to whatever it is that we're talking about, so we can still sit down later and have a family dinner.
For sure. I mean, I literally like sometimes I'll call her Julie to remind myself that she's not my mom. And like I said, sometimes on business calls, it's just easier just because I'm saying like my business partner or whatever it is. And then by the time the call starts, I'll just call her Julie. But sometimes I'll be like, what do you think, mom, Julie? And that's also really funny because then I have to explain like why I just slipped and said mom. And it's like, yes, she's my mom. I probably should have told you that at the beginning, but it just, I don't know, but it's funny. It's definitely an experience.
Oh, it's awesome. I also like how you're able to tie in the real estate aspect to your past experience. And that now, since, you tried to get into the real estate world, how you were able to take that experience, take those classes that you spend all of those time trying to pass,
Mhm.
and now you're able to help other realtors. Do you have any like favorite clients that you've worked with or stories of where you were able to help someone's real estate business and really turn it around for them?
So we started working with brokerages a lot more now.
Oh,
Um, a lot of the clients that I had at the beginning, like a lot of the real estate clients that I had at the beginning, there wasn't as much longevity as I would have liked, and so it's hard to sort of have those case studies with individual agents. When it comes to brokerages, then it becomes a lot easier to find those success stories because, like for example, in one of our pay structures, I'll call it, the brokerage pays for the management while the agents pay for the ad spend.
mhm.
So the agent is getting a system, a CRA, sorry, a system, um, a CRM, an ISA calling the leads and booking all of the appointments, professionally managed Facebook ads, absolutely strategy, absolutely everything. But they don't have to pay for any of the overhead. They don't have to pay for any of the management or anything like that. They're literally just paying ad spend. And the brokerage is not paying for any of the ad spend or anything like that. All they're paying is for me to manage their agents. So that model has allowed me to see a lot more success because the financial investment is collaborative, and so there's more of a buy-in. And so it's easier for me to have long-term growth with the agents themselves. So yeah, for sure, we see success there. Like, it's hard to guarantee anything, but I essentially tell agents that they should be seeing a close a month. And if they're not seeing a close a month, then we got to go back to the drawing board and see what's going on here. Like, we're not working enough within the system. Something's gone wrong and we need to figure out what that is. But like I said, we need to be seeing a close a month.
Interesting. So it is interesting how you're working with brokerages now. I like that they're both buying in that aspect, because it does require more skin in the game and more commitment. And it's easier to work with people who, like, they're all on board for the same mission. It's like, no, this is your part. No, this is your part. It's like, no, we're all doing this together so we could all win collaboratively.
Yeah. I mean, it happens to be the system. The system remains the same, whether or not it's a brokerage or an agent. But I've just found that it's easier to get that buy-in from brokerages. But I also do work with like high-performing real estate agents. So obviously, high-performing real estate agents, as a general rule, are fewer and far between. So, like I said, most of my work is through the brokerages, but that's only because of this whole buy-in, I guess, conundrum that I typically have. But that doesn't really apply, like I said, so much for high-performing real estate agents as well. The system works for them; they buy in and they're committed long-term because they've already been through the ringer, right? Like, they know what they need to happen, so they see my system and they see that it's happening the way it's supposed to be. And they can also close more deals because they just, like I said, they've done this before. They know what they're doing, and I see great success with them as well.
awesome. That's wonderful. I'm really, really glad that you're involved with the brokerages and you've really found what your flow is for this as well. What have been some, like, the more challenging aspects for you with your own
Uh,
agency and with maybe working in the real estate, or maybe with the back systems, or whatever that
yeah.
means to you?
So that's a good question. I think the biggest challenge for me, particularly in real estate, and I don't want to say it doesn't apply for any other industry, but particularly in real estate, I think the fact that there's not a lot of support out there in the industry means that the people that I'm talking to, I can talk until I'm blue in the face and show them and this and that. At the end of the day, like, they're a little bit lost. And so it's harder for them to sort of know what they're buying into a little bit. Like, as much as I show them and everything like that, like, they're aware that they're susceptible. And it's a shame, because I think if they were, I don't want to say smarter consumers, because that's not like a nice way of putting it. But I think, if we'll put it this way, if the associations and Ontario real estate, or the real estate boards of wherever I just happen to be in Ontario, if part of the training to become a real estate agent was around what you need when hiring a lead generation agency, my job would be a lot simpler. And so what I find I need to do is I spend a lot of time, like a lot of time, looking in the mirror and thinking about what I need to do differently and how I can make this more accessible. Tons of time researching my industry and what real estate agents need. And I think there's a level of self-reflection and the ability to be intellectually honest with yourself that is absolutely necessary to be successful in this industry, as like advertising for real estate agents. And I think that's probably the hardest thing, because it's easy to just assume that what you're doing, like, I know my product is great, so it's easy for me to be like, I shouldn't need to change. My product is great. But the reality is that something needs to change, and it always needs to change. And the ability to never stop adjusting has been something that I've needed to keep at the forefront of my mind. Yeah, I just need to keep doing that.
Awesome. Sounds like you've invested a lot of your personal time putting yourself in their shoes, making sure that you can provide the absolute best services for them. And I have heard, I don't work with realtors or real estate, but I do know that it has a high turnover and it is difficult for them. So it's wonderful to hear that you care enough about your clients and about the industry as a whole to be able to take the time to actually research that and figure out what needs to happen for them to be successful.
So just to touch on that a little bit more, in terms of why I'm working in real estate, and how my story about trying to become a real estate agent ties in, is one thing that really bothered me after I failed the test was the reason that I wanted to become a real estate agent is because I'm an entrepreneur. I was never a great tester, as a lot of entrepreneurs can probably attest to themselves. Like, I can't like just memorize like an arbitrary system that someone gives to me. And so it was a little bit outdated to me, that I was learning so much detail oriented information that every realtor that I spoke to said, you're not going to need to know this information. You're not. Most of the job is, how can I help people? How can I get my name out there? How can I make sure that I'm looking after the client? And that's the one thing that I did talk about a lot, is your responsibility to look after the client. And that's what I liked. But the other stuff, it talks about like roofing structures and this and that. Like, you have home inspectors, you have mortgage brokers, like they'll deal with all of that. You don't need to know, you just don't need to know this stuff. Or even if you did need to know it, it's not as important as learning how to be successful in the industry. And it's just not as important as that stuff. And so that was one of the things that perplexed me as to how I didn't get my license. Because in my head, it's like, well, I think I'll be an excellent agent. And the fact that I didn't get a great mark on your test, like, something's fishy there. Something doesn't really work. And so that's what every real estate agent is up against. And that is that they're in a dated industry where they've spent so much time studying and becoming a real estate agent, but nobody talks about how you can make a successful career as a real estate agent. And it's a shame. And I don't really get it. But it is what it is. And every agent, I've never seen anything that it's so uniform what the challenge is. If you ask any real estate agent what's the challenge, like, I don't know how to get leads, right? And like, if I do get the leads, I don't know how to get quality leads, qualified leads. And if I do get qualified leads, I don't know how to nurture them. Like, how is nobody teaching this stuff? I don't know. But so that, like, it's crazy. And that was one of the biggest motivating factors for me to create the system that I have, is because I just don't think that the things that are problems to real estate agents should be the main problem. That's not the reason. That if you're willing to look after somebody and you're going to provide a great service, not being able to find people to provide good service for is not the reason that somebody shouldn't have a successful career.
Wow. Well put. I love your passion behind what's going on with realtors right now. Because I have heard this same issue like verbatim just a couple of weeks ago with one of my friends. Yeah. So it sounds like you've really hit the nail right on the head there, buddy. Like, yeah. Good job. I mean, yeah, it's nice to know that you're extremely passionate about this. I mean, come here, Zuko, come. You coming here? No.
We got a dog coming?
Well, maybe. It's Zuko. He's my baby.
Let me see.
He's
Zuko.
Come here. Hold on one sec. Let's see. Papa? Oh, my baby. Probably just going to start barking. So whoever's at the door. This is my baby.
Oh my gosh. Is that a feather in her hair?
Yeah, it's a boy.
A feather in his hair.
I know it's purple. It's gender neutral.
Well, it's not the color of the feather that got me. It's the fact that he has a feather in his hair that made me assume that it was a girl.
Yeah, he gets groomed all the time. One of our clients, we just take him in, and I do marketing for them. So
yeah, but he looks like a happy dog. That's for sure.
He gets groomed monthly, and my husband picked him up this last time and was like, is that a purple feather? And he's like, I guess he's masculine enough. We're comfortable with our masculinity, so it won't be an issue.
That's what they say. Real men wear pink, right?
Yep. Do you have any pets?
I don't currently have any pets. No, we've had a lot of pets in our days, but I don't have any pets now.
Any children?
Yeah, I got 2 kids. These kids are the apple of my eye. It's I got a 3.5-year-old daughter called Layla, and a 9-month-old baby called Yehuda now. And they are just the cutest things in the world. And she's so sweet to him. He's like sitting down, and she'll go and she'll be like, baby brother, and she'll give him a big hug. She'll go, oh, I love you so. She said one time, it was so cute. She goes, I love you so much. I wanna squeeze your head, or I don't know. It was so cute. And I was like, I know what you mean, Layla. I really do.
That's adorable. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember seeing one of your videos that you posted, and you had your kiddos in there, and I was like, oh, I remember that now. That was a ways back.
Yeah.
You got some beautiful babies, man.
Thank you. I agree. I think I do as well. They definitely take after their mother, but it catches people off surprise when they find out that I'm only 26 years old with 2 kids.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know, what can I say? I love these guys.
When you know, you know.
100%.
That's all there is to it. That's wonderful. Man, I'd love to meet them sometime. They could hold them up on Zoom so I could say hello.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible.
If it wasn't going to be noisier at home, I would have taken Nicole there, but I think this is probably more conducive.
Yeah, probably. Do you have any favorite books that you've listened to? Or I do audibles, so
yeah.
read, listened to,
So
whatever.
it's funny you should ask that given the timing. I thought you were going to ask, do I have any favorite kids? Um, but do I have any favorite books? 100%. So one of my favorite, well, there's a few. I'm trying to, mind if I say more than one? I got a few.
Oh yeah, I'm good.
So one book that I read that I like as a writer, there's no way that somebody who's not a very, very, very skilled writer wrote this book. But the book is called "That Will Never Work," and it's a story of Mark Randolph and the story of Netflix. And just from a writer's, besides for the fact that the story is just fantastic, and I would almost call it like a coming of age biography of the company, if that even makes any sense. But how it started out is just such an adolescent idea and grew into something that's so magnificent. But the actual quality of the writing in that book is some of the most wonderful, like wonderfully descriptive and illustrative writing that like I've ever read. It was absolutely wonderful. Like page by page, I was blown away. I remember one point at the end, Mark Randolph was sitting in a limousine, and the first time he saw Netflix going across the New York Stock Exchange board, and he just described what that feeling was like at that moment. And I was transcended into Mark Randolph's psyche at that point. And it was so wonderfully written. And it was the moment that he realized that he'd accomplished the dream, the insurmountable or the unattainable quote unquote dream of passive income and being financially stable for the rest of your life and knowing that you have that without having to work. And it was just a wonderfully written book and a great story. And then another book that I read that I absolutely adored was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I know that's a classic, but it just simply cannot be overstated how amazing that book is. I think about it all the time in my personal relationships and conversations and the way that I operate day to day. And then 2 more books also. One of them is called The One Thing by Gary Keller. I actually had Jeff Woods, who runs the One Thing brand. I had him on my podcast. That was really exciting to have him. And then lastly, I'm in the middle of reading a book right now by a guy called Sabri Subi.
Mm-hmm.
And Sabri Subi is he owns an advertising agency in Australia, and it's the fastest growing advertising agency in Australia. And it's one of those books where it's like content marketing. That's really what it is I'm sure I'm in the middle of it, so I can't say for sure, but I'm basically sure that at the end of it, it's going to say, if you want any of these strategies, go to King Kong, like his agency website or whatever it is. But, the information there is just so valuable. And the book is called Sell Like Crazy. And it's all about understanding your consumers and basically removing yourself from the equation. And what I find people do is they have what they're able to sell and they go from there and they move towards the person that they're trying to sell it to. And he's essentially saying, do a ton of research and work, understanding the person that you're trying to sell to, and then work backwards. And then within your arsenal of tools, figure out how you can solve those problems. Nothing that's so drastic or bizarre or anything like that, but it's something that is so overlooked that people, I know what I can accomplish. And now let me think about how what I can accomplish can work for you. And he's like, no, don't do it like that. Think about what they need and then work backwards. So I'm really enjoying that book also.
I wrote it down. I'll get the replay of this obviously,
Yeah.
but I wrote it down. I've got some Audible credits, and I haven't even heard of that one, Sell Like Crazy yet.
Yeah.
But it sounds interesting. The
I've
Gary.
already referred that book to about like 3-4 people, and I literally only started reading. What is it? It's Monday. I'm going to start reading it 2 days ago. I'm about 200 pages in, and it's just like value after value after value. So all 4 of those books are very valuable in different ways.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I did The One Thing probably about 2 years ago. And actually it was a friend of mine, Sean Carpentier. She works with Keller Williams and is an agent. A very classy, smart, savvy woman, does a lot for this community, both her and her husband. And she recommended that I read this book. And after I did it, I was like, this is gold. I'm happy I'm implementing this already in my life. And now I can explain the different aspects of the one thing and actually organize and execute my life even better. And it is a tremendous book. The same with the 7 habits, 7 habits of successful people. I think that's what it's called.
Highly effective people.
Highly Effective People. That one was really good too. I've burned through so many books. I used to spend a lot of time driving, so I'd have them playing while I was
Yeah.
driving and flying as well. Just yeah, you're sitting on the plane. What else are you going to do? Listen to an
Right.
audible book,
It's
right?
that in podcasting, right? Like that's what generally speaking people are listening to.
Yeah.
But
Speaking of podcasting, you have an amazing podcast as
well, thank
well.
you.
You've had the opportunity to interview some incredible individuals who not only have their own podcasts, they're CEOs, they're other agency owners, people who who really are experts in what they do. And so, how has your podcasting journey gone for you? And what are some of your favorite interviews that you've done so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way it started essentially is we were on a think tank. I think you were there also probably. Um, and we were talking about, it was with Dennis Yu, and we were talking about different things that you could do to build your own social proof. And one of the things he said is build a podcast. And that was something that I always wanted to do. And I don't know if you remember at the end of the episode when I asked the question, but I said to him, I said, okay, well, I hear what you're saying, Dennis, but everyone knows who you are, right? You've been on CNN, you've been on Fox, and you've been featured in all of the biggest advertising magazines in the world. But for a guy like me, nobody knows who I am. I have like my small agency, whatever it is. How do I build that? And he said, create a couple of episodes and speak to this guy and speak to that guy. And these were people in my group, like maybe not necessarily the most high profile people that were really accessible. So I did that. And I created 2 episodes myself. And then I interviewed a few people. And then before you know it, I had enough episodes there that I started reaching out, let's say one social rung up at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, just like in a second, people were asking me to be on the show. Like I said, I spoke to Jeff Woods, I spoke to Roger Nair, and I spoke to really exciting people. And it was just so cool having the opportunity to do that. And I think one of the reasons that people don't do this, and one of the reasons that people get stuck is like, how do I move forward with my podcast? Is they don't realize the people that there are around them. And so one of the things that I always say is, every single person in the world, and I mean this with absolute sincerity, like not as a cliche, every single person in the world is qualified to say things that only they are qualified to say. Mm-hmm. Because Rina, you have your experiences, you have your education, your life, your kids, your dog, your husband. Nobody else has what you have. And so your perspective is different, sincerely, than anybody else's perspective. So if I ask you a question and I can somehow manage to get you out of your own head or thinking about what the answer should be or whatever it is, and I just get you speaking as authentically as possible, I will receive an answer that I physically could not have received from anybody else. And I think that's an incredibly powerful fact, because the network that you have, number one, you don't realize, number one, how impressive people are on paper, but also number two, you don't realize how impressive what they have to say is. And that was the coolest thing for me, is once I started getting those really cool, amazing answers from people, and then this content just sort of wrote itself, and it was magnificent. I had an episode with Michael Pachito. I guess this will answer the second part of your question, is what was some of my favorites. So Michael Pachito owns an agency here in Ontario. I don't even know where. I don't even know what his niche is. We didn't even talk about that. But essentially the story is he wrote a post on Facebook about what it's like living with ADHD. So I have ADHD, nothing like what he was describing that he had. It was sort of just a thing that I work with. It's not debilitating at all, but it's there. And I found that what he was saying was such a more extreme version of what I'm going through. And everything he said, like really hit home, to the point where it's like, oh my God, wow. Yes. Like point after point after point, like that is what it's like. I cannot believe it. And I said, like, and I was on like a crusade to start going after some of the biggest names in the world at this point in time. And Michael Pachito is not going to do that for me. He's a wonderful guy with a fantastic story. In terms of getting a guy like Gary Vaynerchuk on the show, if I say I had Michael Pachito on the show, that's not going to mean anything to Gary Vaynerchuk. But the guy was just so brilliant. And I was like, I have to have him. I have to. And the amount of times during that episode that he said, I'm not qualified to say this. I'm not qualified to say this, was absolutely staggering. I was like, oh my gosh, you keep on saying that you're not qualified to say this. And I hear what you're saying. Maybe you're not qualified on paper, but you are saying ridiculous stuff. It's so magnificent. And he was not trying, he wasn't being, he doesn't even know how to be inauthentic, this guy. He was not trying to be clever. He was not trying to be anything. But I mean, you can listen to the episode. It's absolutely magnificent. And I got people calling me after that one. It was like, what a wonderful episode. And I think at that moment that he kept on saying, I'm not qualified to say this, I'm not qualified to say this, made me realize, like, you keep on saying that, but you're sure as hell qualified to be saying this. However you think you're not, you are. And I think that's when my like tagline, so to speak, of everyone in the world is qualified to say things that everyone in the world can say things that only they are qualified to say. And that's when I realized that I don't care about the piece of paper. Yeah, maybe I care about the social rung that somebody's on when I interview them for my social proof. But at the end of the day, if I'm going for quality of content, it doesn't matter. Just get someone from speaking from the heart, and they will just like blow your mind.
That's beautiful. I hear you and I feel you 100% of the way. For people who are listening right now or watching right now, how can they find your podcast?
Yeah, so it's in a lot of places. It's on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast. Anyway, the show is called The Real Marketer, so you can look it up there. My name is Oliver Borr, and my agency is Borr Digital. So if you want, you can also go to my website. That's borrdigital.com. That's BORR digital.com, or you can just look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, and yeah, like reach out. I'm happy to connect. I'm happy to answer questions. If you want to be on the show, let me know, and we can talk about that maybe being a possibility. Or like I said, every guest has the opportunity to be a mind-blowing episode. So if anybody wants to be on the show, reach out, and we'll see if there's an opportunity there.
I believe you. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much, Rina. Really appreciate it.